Welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint Podcast. My name is Phil Crimmins, and the Mandarin Blueprint Podcast, for those of you who are new here, is a Q&A podcast that covers the questions and comments that came in on the Mandarin Blueprint Method video course in the comments section below each video, or it came in through the Mandarin Blueprint Community Forum, or perhaps email. But as usual, we always start each lesson, at least for the foreseeable future, with a grammar point. And today's grammar point covers the tag GW-Relator-Towards-What-PPT-介词-对. So this is a grammar point covering 对, which usually people learn as meaning correct, like 对不对, as in am I right or not, correct or not. And that is true, but it also can be used as a relator, which is our word for preposition, because preposition doesn't indicate anything about what it means, whereas relator, or a 介词, is a word that shows you the relationship between usually sometimes two people, a person and a thing. It's kind of expressing, in this case, towards. So perhaps you speak towards something, or you have an opinion towards something, or an attitude, or a treatment towards something. Now, I do want to make a distinction. This is not the same as the towards that we covered when we talked about the character Wang, which is more about the literal direction that you're moving, and there's usually a destination involved. This is more abstract, so it's, as I say, like things like what's your attitude towards something. And the best way to get this across, as usual, is to show some example sentences. So here's sentence 1. 我对他说我爱你. So here we can see that 对 comes right before 他, and then a verb, 说. So it's expressing that the speech is towards him. So you would imagine that your friend overhears you say in the other room, but they're not looking at you, like they're in the other room, and they overhear you say, 我爱你. And then they come in excitedly, like, who did you say you love? Who'd you say I love you to? And you'd say, 我对他说. So that way you can indicate the target of your speech. So that's a very simple sentence that shows, okay, you're speaking. Who are you speaking towards? 对他. But it doesn't always have to be a person. For example, in sentence 2, we see here, 对这件事不想多说. He doesn't want to talk much about the matter. So in this case, the target is 这件事. So it's an abstract thing. It's just a matter or an issue. And then what about it? 不想多说. Don't want to speak too much about it. So that's an example of the more kind of straightforward way to express towards using 对. But how about if you want to express opinions? Well, in this case, we're going to use 对 blank 来说. This is how you express whose perspective does an opinion come from. Let's take a look at this sentence. 这些钱对他来说不少. This is no small amount of money in his opinion. So you could write this sentence as 对他来说这些钱不少. That's fine as well. But either way, what we have is 对 blank 来说. Well, whose opinion is it? It's 他. And this is often used with pronouns. For example, 对我来说汉语蓝图很棒. So in my opinion, Mandarin Blueprint's pretty neat. But it could be 对他来说, 对你来说, 对他们来说. These are all fine, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a pronoun. It could be, for example, 对我们说英文的人来说学汉语比学别的语言难一点. For those of us who speak English, learning Chinese is a bit harder than learning other languages. So here you see that the opinion comes from 我们说英文的人. So it's not just 我 or 他. It's people who speak English, and by saying 我们说英文的人, the speaker is including themselves in that particular perspective. So it's possible when you're expressing an opinion and you use the 对 blank 来说 to have as articulated as you like a person or people whose perspective this comes from. And so that's how you express opinions using 对. Now, what about attitude? You can use 对 to express your attitude towards something. And usually when you will express an attitude, you're using some kind of psychological verb like satisfied or interested or responsible for, something that requires an internal kind of verb. So let's take a look at a couple of sentences that'll give you a sense of this. 他对他的男朋友不满意. 她对她的男朋友不满意. She's not satisfied with her boyfriend. So she, 她对 towards what? 她的男朋友, her boyfriend. And then what's the final attitude? That's the end of the sentence is 不满意. So not satisfied. By the way, 满意, that's a really cool word because it literally means full meaning. So 满 means full, and it's got the water component on the side, so you can imagine a cup filled all the way. It's 满了. It's already completely filled. And then the second character, 意, means meaning. So full of meaning means you're satisfied, or 不满意 means you're not satisfied. And so she towards her boyfriend not satisfied. Here's another sentence. 你对我的同事感兴趣吗? 你 subject 对 what? 我的同事 my colleague. What's your attitude? 感兴趣吗? So 感兴趣 means to be interested in. And it's also a question, so we add in ma at the end. Are you interested in my colleague? So this structure of subject plus 对 plus object plus psychological verb helps you express an attitude towards something or usually a person using 对. And there are a few words that come up a lot in this particular structure, and this is not an exhaustive list, but let's take a look at a few of them. 对 something something 有兴趣. That would mean to have an interest in, and it's a little bit different from 感兴趣 because especially if you have 对 plus a person plus 感兴趣, that has a feeling of like romantic interest. 你对他感兴趣吗? Are you interested in him or interested in her? And so if you just say 有兴趣, that has more of a feel of like just an interest in general, like I'm interested in the topic of this book or something like that. Now, here's a couple of more. 对 something something 负责 to be responsible for, or 对 something something 失望 to be disappointed with, or 对 something something 好奇. That would be to be curious about. And so all of these are examples of where you're using 对 before an object and then expressing your attitude towards it. So that should help clarify when you can use 对 to express attitude. Finally, let's look at how you can use 对 to express your treatment towards something. So for example, if you were to think of the word 对, it has a few other constituent words, one of them being 对待. And the word 对待 means to treat someone or treatment of someone or something. And so that's where this usage derives, where you can talk about how you are treating something. One of the best examples comes from sentence 7. 不吃菜对身体不好. Not eating vegetables is bad for your health. So 对 what towards what? 身体, which means body or health. It's kind of cool how the Chinese don't really make a distinction between your body and your health. If your body's not good, your health is not good, and fair enough. And so, 对 what? 对身体. And then what's the opinion there after it? 不好. So, 不吃菜对身体不好. So you could say 抽烟 smoking 对身体不好. You could say 不运动 not exercising. 对身体不好. And if you wanted to say that something is actually good for your health, that is a good way to treat your health, you could just switch 不 with 很. So 多多运动对身体很好. That's an example of using it in a good way. Frequently exercising is good for your health. So once again, it's how do you treat your body, treat your health, 对身体 either 不好 or 很好. But it doesn't have to be just your body. It could be other things that you treat well or not. How about a person? So let's take a look at this sentence. 有什么办法可以找到一个对我又好、长得又好看的男朋友呢? Now this sentence is a little bit long and it uses the double 又 structure where she's making 2 points. She's saying, not only is he treat me well, which is the only point that matters for this particular grammar point, but he also looks good, in which case we've got the 2 又 in the sentence. But don't worry about that for now. The main thing is that she says 对我好 or 对我很好 or 对我不好. These are the different ways you could say it. And it's just treatment of a person. Is it good? 好 or is it not good? 不好. So regardless of whether you're expressing opinions, attitudes, treatments, etc., 对 relates to how a subject is behaving towards the object. So keep your eye out for these as you move forward, and that way you can 对你自己很好. Next, we'll move into our comments and emails. The first one is by Faraz in the community forum. He says, I wanted to pick people's brains on how much time they spend reviewing on Anki. About a week ago, I found that I was spending a lot of time doing my reviews, to the point that I couldn't study new words. Anki wanted me to review 150 to 250 cards per day, half grammar, half words, which was taking me 1 to 1.5 hours a day. I did not have the time to do that, plus learn a meaningful number of new words each day. I managed to reduce this to 45 minutes to an hour by downloading the Speed Focus Anki add-on, which makes me automatically reject a card if I spend more than 15 seconds on it. I found it to be a good approach because if I have to spend that much time thinking about a word, I essentially don't know it. However, this is still a bit more time than I'd like to spend reviewing. To be clear, I am not counting adding new cards, then encountering them in Anki for the first time as part of the review process. Review is strictly old cards. Should I just time box my Anki review to 30 minutes a day, hard stop? Does anybody have experience doing less than the Anki recommendation or tweaking the parameters? And thoughts on whether that affects retention. Generally speaking, what is an effective ratio of reviewing time versus time spent learning new words? So this is a great problem to analyze because everybody's going to go through this, especially if they have a limited amount of time. But first, we need to diagnose how did this happen in the first place. So I'm sure that this happened in the first place because Faraz was getting excited about the new words that he was learning and putting a lot of new content into his review queue. But eventually, you get to a point where your number of reviews each day is getting to somewhat overwhelming as he's experiencing. So what this means is that there are too many new facts going into the queue because the Anki algorithm already gets it to the point where you're reviewing it the minimum amount of time so that you still retain everything you learn at a 90 to 95% retention rate, which is, based on over 100 years of research. So we shouldn't assume that the amount of reviewing time is quote unquote too much, because if it's too much, that suggests that all that research on spaced repetition is somehow doesn't apply to you or doesn't apply to me. We should assume that it does apply to you or me. So with that in mind, it means that the amount of time reviewing that you have to spend reviewing is the minimum amount of time you must spend reviewing if you want to have a decent retention rate. So that means that there are just too many new facts going into the review queue if your review time is taking too long. So here's what I suggested to Faraz, and here's what you might do if you end up in the same situation. So for a few days or maybe a week even, don't add any new content. Just keep reviewing each day. And what will naturally happen is that as you're reviewing the cards and you're getting many of them right, you'll end up creating longer and longer intervals, and therefore you will eventually have less time each day to review. So once you get it down to a manageable level, say 30 minutes, then what you do is you do your reviews first. So you get that out of the way. So say you have an hour and let's say an hour for the sake of argument. You have an hour to review. I should say you have an hour to study Chinese in general that day, not just an hour to review. You have an hour in general. So it takes you 30 minutes to do your reviews. So you have 30 minutes remaining. Take 15 minutes to learn new content, and then take the remaining 15 minutes to put that new content through Anki as new cards. So anytime you learn new content, you unsuspend those cards. They enter your new card queue, and then you review them the same day. So that's what should be happening every time you do your reviews. And so this is the formula for how you do it. You basically go, how much time do I have total? In this example, I said 1 hour. First, you do your reviews, and then you see how much time you have left over, and then you take that time and split it in half. So if you have 1 hour, it takes you 30 minutes to do your reviews. That means you have 30 minutes remaining. So 15 minutes of learning new content, 15 minutes of putting that new content into Anki. And that could be your formula for figuring out how to add not too much new content so that your reviews the next day become too much. It all is based on how much time you have on that given day. So I would recommend figuring out, okay, today I have an hour, today I have 2 hours, whatever it is. And if you have a day where you suddenly have a lot more time, just be careful how much new content you add. So like say you suddenly have a 3-hour day to practice. Well, you might want to do something where you go, okay, I'm going to do my reviews and then I'm going to learn for a limited amount of time and then put those new cards into your review queue. Because if tomorrow you only have an hour and you learned, a number of new things, like way too much new content the day before, then an hour is not going to be enough to do all your reviewing. So there's some degree of that. So just be aware that it is possible to overwhelm your reviews if you have too many new cards. Next, we have a comment from Jonathan Pritchard in the community forum. He says, life went sideways for a couple months and my daily practice fell off the radar, but I put in 4 consecutive days of refreshing my Anki cards. Even with all the mnemonic experience I have, I'm still majorly impressed with the high retention of the characters I'd practiced a while back. I love it. I can't say enough good things about all the work you've put in. It really is amazing how effective mnemonics are when it comes to retention, because the idea is that, as I mentioned in the previous comment, it is true that Anki in and of itself as a spaced repetition should be pretty darn good at helping you retain things. If you originally had an excellent retention method through mnemonics, then you might even retain it regardless of Anki, which is something that's why it's good that Anki has the easy button, because if you really remember a scene super well, then you don't have to review it that much. You just need to review it like a little bit. So it's good that Anki has that easy option. And Jonathan, keep it up now that you're back. Next, we have a comment by Cameron in the community forum. He says, hey, my name is Cameron. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I am 2 days into the Mandarin Blueprint experience and am loving it so far. While I am not a complete beginner, I am emptying my cup to start again with a fresh mind. I have always been interested in China and Chinese culture thanks to my parents and martial arts. I even studied traditional Chinese medicine at university here in Melbourne for 2 years before switching out after realizing that career wasn't for me. I have started and stopped learning a few languages along the way, including Mandarin, but am determined to make it work this time, and this course is feeling like the perfect fit right now. Cheers, Cameron. Well, the key to any success is to have a strong enough internal motivation, and then hopefully what we can provide here at Mandarin Blueprint is a framework that you can trust in. So it's like, we can't make you be motivated. We can, give some advice and we can give some ways of thinking about things that you may find motivating, but we ultimately can't make you motivated. But what we can do is make it so that when you are motivated, you can trust in the materials you're using. It's a shame that we've seen many times where people are very motivated, but then they end up going through the traditional learning route with textbooks and tutors and, all that sort of traditional route. And their motivation gets a cold shower because it just is too untrustworthy. It's too ineffective. So hopefully what we can do here at Mandarin Blueprint is give you an effective toolkit. And welcome, Cameron. Good to have you here. Alex C. in the community forum. He says, hey, team, I just completed the pronunciation mastery course, and I wanted to say that it's been absolutely phenomenal. And I can't wait to continue with the foundation course. My Mandarin teacher, pre-COVID, has said that my pronunciation has been quite good, but after taking the course and delving into the subtle nuances and details, I feel confident I'm on track to being really solid. Thank you so much. I would love to know what the approximate estimated number of active hours would be required to complete the Mandarin Blueprint Method Foundation course. That includes video hours plus reasonable expected Anki study hours. With that number, it makes it easy for me to break down how much time in my schedule will be able to allow me to progress through the course. This is totally a generalized question, so I understand that the response is also incredibly generalized and becomes a pretty fuzzy range. Well, we wrote a couple of articles about this. The foundation course, I believe you can finish in about 250 hours. And that's based on everything you said there. We took into account Anki reviews. We took into account the amount of time watching videos. And then we also did one about the entire Mandarin Blueprint Method course through the intermediate. And so you can check that out on our website. It's one of the main pinned posts on our blog. So check that out over there to get a sense of that. Next, Fred Snyder in the community forum. He says, "Hi, Luke and Phil, I have a question. From past study, I have a character recognition and use of about 1,000 words and characters, able to read and understand graded readers with that level. For part 1 of the Mandarin Blueprint Method, I know most of the vocabulary and can't see the point in creating scenes in movies. Question, how can I use the Mandarin Blueprint Method to look up those usually more complicated characters and trace back to how to use components and characters that I already know in creating memory cues? Not sure if I'm explaining my issue clearly, but any comments would be helpful. By the way, the pronunciation course was fantastic. Thanks, Fred." So I wrote an article about this called How to Approach the Mandarin Blueprint Method as an Intermediate Learner, where I detail how to do this. But here's how you want to think of it, Fred. The Hanzi movie method is incredibly effective at teaching you new characters. And you know maybe 1,000 words and characters, which means you have a lot more characters to learn. The Hanzi movie method is the most effective way to quickly get those into your long-term memory. However, you do need to know, it is a system where you have to know the tools in the system. So you need to know your actors, sets, and props, which are representations of the pinyin initials, pinyin finals, and character components, respectively. And so you must know those things to be able to learn a new character. So how you approach it is you follow the course, and then you, as you're following the course, you see, do I know this particular character component, and have I made a prop for it? And if you didn't use a mnemonic system before, you didn't make any props for any components, so you'll need to make props for the different components. You'll need to choose actors to become the representation of the pinyin initials, and you'll need to choose your 13 sets. So once you've done that, so basically you go through the course and you look at every single pick a prop lesson, every single casting call lesson, and every single set the scene lesson. All of them require you to put in and input into Anki your individual actor sets and props. Now, the make a movie lessons is where there's room for you to skip if you know everything. So when you get to a make a movie lesson, you can ask yourself, do I know the pronunciation, meaning, and writing of this character already? It's already memorized. If you do, then you can skip. But it's good that you didn't skip the pick a prop lesson that came before it because, again, you need a mnemonic image to represent every character component. So that's the way you approach it. You just skip any make a movie lessons that are of characters you already know, or any new vocabulary unlocked lessons that are of words you already know, and you'll be all set. Next, we have an email from Al Roy. He says, okay, this is a relatively minor thing in the bigger picture, but it was a cool aha moment for me. I've been faithfully going through my Anki cards day after day, and some stuff I pick up on with little or no real effort. While I can go over and over and over other things, and even though I see the English translation at the bottom after hitting the show answer button, they just don't make thinking sense to me. On one of the Another Brick Added Grammar Review cards, there is the following sentence. 那如果你还是觉得不完美，你又要写一次吗? Okay, so it's not a super complicated sentence, but for me, it just wouldn't click. So tonight, I went over it a few more times, and suddenly the clouds opened up and I saw a bit of sunshine, so to speak. And I got it. Yippee! But that isn't all of this story. As I continue to work through the lessons, the daily exposure to characters, words, and sentences does seem to be having the desired effect. So after I finally got the above Chinese sentence, I said to myself, I finally get it. And then I said out loud, 我总算了解了. Okay, so I probably got a bit too excited and ended up leaving out of this or that, but the cool thing was that it was completely generated in Chinese. Now I know I've done a few of those before, but so far I think they've all closely paralleled other sentences that were memorized. But this was a pure sentence, generated in Chinese without having to think anything in Korean or English. I grabbed my phone and spoke it into that bastion of accurate machine translation, sarcastic, Google Translate, and it came out in English as, I finally understand. Good enough for me, at least for now. I've learned 480 characters so far to level 31. I find that I'm more in a flow state when I actually know more characters and don't have to rely on using the top-down translations as I go along. But in reality, I am working through sentences at level 18. But things seem to be accelerating, probably a short growth spurt, but I'll take it, a bit over the past few days as I've learned more characters. So I expect to work through several levels per day over the coming week. And I'm quite excited about it. With the number of characters I've learned, I intend to slowly change my focus more towards spending time on the content and not focus quite as so heavily on the characters. But so far it's helped me the way I had hoped it would. I remember passing through the longer readings a while back as I focused on just acquiring hanzi for a couple of weeks. So I expect I'll be encountering those readings probably sometime this week. I'm very much looking forward to that. Side note, I fully expected to be farther along by now, but life has a funny way at times of getting in front of the things I want to do and making a deal with other more pressing things. And this, of course, pulls me away from study time, whether I like it or not. But I'm still thrilled to be making progress in spite of all that. Just thought I'd reach out and let y'all know where I'm at. This is kind of sort of becoming more fun as I progress. Cheers, Al. Well, this is great to hear because what you're saying here, Al, is that something that we know, but it's great to see that you're recognizing this process, is that much of what the grammar acquisition process looks like is accepting what you see as in a basic understanding. So if you read a sentence and you can understand what it means at a basic level, that will eventually accumulate to a critical mass where you can generate Chinese sentences. And this is called the activation process. So the fact that your brain automatically said, 我总算了解了, means that you're starting to have the language module really do its work. And that's something that is hard to see on a day-to-day basis. But the fact that you're taking the time to reflect on that means that your motivation will likely stay high because you can see your progress. We all want to know that our progress is working. Also, as a small point, in a couple of the emails, you sent us the word hanzi, but you actually wrote the word hanzi, which is a manly man. A hanzi is a manly man. The second character, zi, should have the roof component at the top if you want to indicate Chinese character. So just want to point that out because it's a very common mistake that people will make. They'll just type in the pinyin for hanzi and it will come up as the hanzi, which is a man of a manly man guy, but you need to have it to be hanzi, which is the letters of the Han. So that's just a small point there. But thanks so much for the feedback. It's great to hear that and, keep it up. And we're always happy to hear these updates. Next, we have an email from Henry. He says, "Hi, Luke and Phil. Thank you for your personal email concerning my experience with the Mandarin Blueprint Method. It's been very interesting to know there's a systematic method to learn and remember Chinese characters. I'm a slow learner, so I'm just passing level 3 to level 4 and trying to put things together. I shall update you about my progress. In the meantime, I know I will slowly but surely master the techniques and can't wait for the day I can read Mandarin without pinyin help. Thanks again for sharing the excellent method of teaching/studying Mandarin. Best regards, Henry Trong." And we're thrilled to have you on the course. And you say you're a slow learner, but to be honest, mnemonics can be they can. Let's just put it this way: keep an open mind to the fact that you may not be slow at this process once you get the hang of it. Level 3 or 4, you're still really learning the method, but once you get the hang of it, there's nothing that says like, oh, I was a slow learner in school. Yeah, well, maybe you were a slow learner in school with the traditional crappy institutionalized educational systems that kind of are all over the world. But it may be that you end up discovering that these methods you're quite good at. So I wouldn't pigeonhole yourself by saying that you're a slow learner. Maybe you'll be a fast learner. Who knows? Next, Darcy Mallon by email. "Hi, Phil and Luke. I absolutely endorse with no reservations using your program to learn Mandarin. I love it, in fact. I hesitated in the beginning because I had just paid premium for Chinese 101 and had several small apps that were working somewhat. I should have paid for your full subscription cost without taking the discount in all fairness to your excellent program, but I had no idea yet how much work had gone into developing these courses, nor how valuable they would prove to be. I'm only starting today on level 13 and I'm so excited to get to it. Can we wait a bit to figure out how best to give you feedback and in a form I can do? Right now, I just want to get into this level and see what Anki offers me. Thanks for all your patience in answering my inquiries quickly. Best regards, Darcy. Well, so thrilled that you're enjoying it. And, you hit on the point that is a bit of a difficult thing for us from a marketing perspective, which is that it doesn't really matter that our course has so much more content and is so much more well-researched than other online courses. If our price is, we're a little bit higher than other courses, but our prices could be reasonably, 10 times the price, and it would be justified based on the content, but it doesn't really matter because people just go, all online courses are created equal when they first start looking into them, and they go, Duolingo's, $10 a month. So why not do that? Having no understanding that Duolingo's Chinese program is not even nearly as in-depth as ours is. And so it is a bit of a frustrating thing about that. But on the other hand, because most of the cost in making the course is already behind us, we don't have a huge amount of overhead right now, so we can kind of afford to still have it at a price point that is comparable to these other inferior products. So, but thank you for your endorsement, Darcy. And we can check in with you at the end of the foundation course and see how you're doing then. Next, we have a comment from Phil Challenor on Make a Movie Die, which is the character for bag. If someone had shown me this symbol 4 weeks ago, I'd have said it looked virtually impossible to recognize, never mind know how to pronounce it with the correct tone and write it as well. Terrific method again, guys. Can't say it enough. Sure, Dai is a character that looks quite complicated, but when you break it down, it's actually pretty simple. But that's a lot of Chinese characters, and you have to build up in a logical fashion. So thrilled to hear that you're finding the method so effective, Phil. Helen Lemon on New Vocabulary Unlocked, 一半. I'm writing this now in case, as I get more confident, I forget the sense of elation I felt finishing this lesson and realizing, with the pronunciation course under my belt, that I was making real progress. I tried to learn Chinese when I lived in Shanghai for a few months, but so very little seemed to stick that I lost confidence. Your method is really transformative, and I'm very, very pleased I found it. Thank you. Well, that's fantastic, Helen. And, that's pretty quick to recognize just how certain your success is if you keep going, because that's what you're feeling. You're feeling like, oh, this is going to work. And 一半, that's the first word. That's the first 2-character word we teach in the course. So that's fantastic that you're already getting a sense of that, and keep it up. Julio Navoa Baron on bonus video, The 6 Types of Chinese Characters, parts 3 of 3. Wow, now it all makes sense. I gave up Chinese twice because I couldn't understand the characters, especially when you have the exact pronunciation for each different one. You explained in one simple page the components so easily, it makes my mind blow up. Well, that's certainly the process of learning Chinese is a mind-blowing experience, and at many different levels. It's not just understanding the characters, it's also as you continue to get more and more input, you'll find that many concepts that you sort of just accepted in your native language, when they're framed in Chinese, you go, oh, wow, this is like a totally new view on sometimes even the simplest of things, like just the nature of an object or a concept and how you could reconceptualize it in the Chinese way and see it in a different light. You'll get more and more of those as you go along, and it really is quite a fun feeling. So congratulations on already having that sense, Julio. Next, we have a comment from Aaron Braden on Mandarin Syllables Introduction. He says, thank you, Mandarin Blueprint, for creating this awesome program. I've been intimidated before trying to learn Mandarin, but the way Mandarin Blueprint is set up makes it so much easier and gives me confidence that I can learn it. How you guys break down how to pronounce the words makes so much sense. So far, I'm having a blast. Well, you're quite early in the course, in the Pronunciation Mastery course, and just keep it up. Everything is just an individual fact that needs to be learned. And if you can break it down into its component parts, it's just a matter of walking the path. So you're on your way, and we will continue to break things down in such a fashion throughout the entire course. So have a great time and keep it up, Aaron. Christine on Pick a Prop for Ba. I'm a bit confused. Maybe this was addressed previously, but if you want to associate the character with the meaning, and you already had used BB-8 from Star Wars in the movie to create this character, why can't you continue to use BB-8 as the prop to represent this? So this is a question that, you learn the character Ba make a movie, and then after that we say pick a prop. And sometimes people are looking backwards when they are at this pick a prop section. They go, well, wait, didn't I just make a movie for this character? Why am I now coming up with a prop to represent this character? I just did that. And the answer is that this is not about the character or the movie scene you just made. It's about future characters that are going to use this character as a component. Ba is a very simple component, and it exists in several other characters. So I should say it's a very simple character, and it exists as a component in more complicated characters. So if your movie scene ended up with BB-8, you have the option to use BB-8 as your representation of Ba, but it's not required. If you would rather use an 8-ball or you'd rather use something else that you associate with 8, that's fine too. It's really up to you. So it's not to say that you can't. It's just that by having a pick-a-prop lesson, we are indicating to you that this character is also a component. Not every character is also a component. So some characters have already reached their level of complication, and they won't. Their highest level of complication, they won't be used as an entire character in future characters. And so if that's the case, you will not pick a prop. But when it's a simple character like Ba, it's very likely that the entire character is going to exist in more complicated characters, at which point you must choose a representation of it. And it may be that the movie that you made is a good representation, but it's also possible you'd rather have something else. So it's really just your choice. So it's not that you can't use BB-8, it's that you have a choice. Here we have a comment from Mary, who is away for a little bit. Mary says, I had a really difficult month when I was working back-to-back and only managed to revise some Anki sporadically. Good news, I can remember how all of the hanzi looks and what the words mean. And I can still write them recognizably and with the strokes in the right order. I remember all my initial sounds and tones. Bad news, I can't remember why the final here is an I. Could you point me to the lessons regarding finals again? Sorry, and this is in the make a movie for ji, as in ji hua. And the final is actually, we call this a null final because all of the E sounds are represented by a female actress. And that's why you don't need to have a final. Because if we know that like sounds like ji or qi or xi or p are all females, then the female itself represents the I. The fact that it's Jennifer Aniston, for example, represents the I. And so the point being that if you have J for like Jennifer Aniston, she represents J and I. The J part of it is her name, and the I part of it is that she's female. And then that leaves nothing else because it's just ji. So that means no final, which means it takes place in your childhood home. So you'll get the hang of that in no time again. I'm sure it was just being away for a little bit. You forgot that detail. No problem. Lamata Augustus on casting call for R1255. He says, quick question. If I'm in the zone and studying for a few hours in a row, say 2 or more hours, is it okay to take a 10-minute or so music break? A music break that has nothing to do with the Chinese language. I guess it could be music break or something else totally unrelated to Chinese. Curious to know what your thoughts are about that. I mean, absolutely, because your brain needs to step away from things sometimes to properly re-evaluate it. So this is why time boxing, when you do 10 minutes, there's often a 2-minute break in between your 10-minute study periods. So you'll study for 10 minutes, break for 2 minutes, study for 10 minutes. And in the break, you're encouraged not to think at all about what you're studying, so that your unconscious mind has a chance to handle it and step away from it for a little bit. So absolutely, if you want to take a music break, that will almost invariably help your study go longer and be better processed. So by all means. Nor Eckerberg on Make a Movie for Le. This is an interesting one. So let's go into it. He says, hey team, I proudly told my Chinese friend that I've learned the concept of le as a change, and she didn't understand what I meant, so I took the example you had in the video about liking someone. She said that the sentence makes no sense at all. I asked why, and she said that it just makes no sense to a Mandarin speaker, but she was not sure why. I don't know, but 我喜欢他了 just makes no sense, that's for sure. I asked her for better examples, and she gave, you are introducing your cousin to your buddy. This is my little cousin. She's a cute girl. And 我可喜欢他了. It makes sense, and 可 here emphasizes the depths of emotion. I smile, but in Chinese, you cannot say 我笑. Le is a necessity here. You can also say 我可喜欢吃饭了. I super like eating, a clumsy verbatim translation. So I have two questions. What's wrong with the sentence you provided, and why does a native speaker think it's so weird? Was it taken out of context, maybe? And can you explain how the concept of change in her examples, especially one with eating and cousin? So there's a couple of things here. So if you're taking an individual sentence, it's really hard. So if you're talking to a native speaker, they never think of their language in terms of teaching it, right? Or in terms of learning it. So they're not necessarily going to think about the context of, like, so if I see the sentence, 我喜欢他了, as a non-native speaker, I might think about some context where you might say that. But as a native speaker, that's not usually what you would do. So for example, 喜欢, if you're a native speaker, you probably think, and when you say 喜欢a person, what that usually means is like someone as in romantically like them. And if that's the context in which you're thinking of it, then you're not necessarily thinking of it from a grammatical perspective. You're thinking like, we would say 我喜欢上他, or 我喜欢上了他. And so why are they saying 我喜欢他了? And the reason is just that we were trying to get across a basic sentence and just show that if you added le, it would mean a change. But it doesn't mean that, like, this is a common context or this is a thing that you would say very often. It's just saying that adding le would have to indicate that there was a change that occurred. And so it's not like, you know, there is some context where you would say that. It might be a very weird context. It might be a context that comes up very, very rarely. And that's why a native speaker would be like, that's weird. We would never, why would we ever say that? Because they're not thinking in terms of what is a context where you might say that. Our only purpose was just to say that le must indicate a change. So if there's a le in the sentence, there's a change somewhere. Now, the fact that a native speaker can't conceptualize where that change might be because there's no surrounding context does not indicate that the sentence is grammatically wrong. It just means that there's probably very few contexts where you would say that. But it doesn't mean that it's not a grammatically correct sentence. And at this early stage of the course, as a matter of fact, this is not even in the grammar section of the course yet. I was just sort of throwing it in there in the Make a Movie for Le video just as a preview of something you're going to get used to. So there's kind of like, there's the meta thing here, which is that don't worry too much about it right now because it's just sort of we're just indicating to you that, hey, this is a thing that foreigners sometimes get tripped up on and it just means a change, but worry about it later. And then the example is, the example that she gives here, the 我可喜欢他了, that's just a different sentence. It's just a totally different, because if you say 我可喜欢他了, that's like adding that 可 is, it's just adding like she says, a depth of emotion or adding a different feel to it. And so like it's just a different thing that would be said there. And then 我笑了 is the reason why you would have a le there is because you're generally not smiling. It's like not like you walk around as your natural state is smiling. So if you smile, it's a change compared to your natural state before that. And so yeah, so like I would when a native speaker says that, the way you have to remember that is that just because something is not contextually clear, like that's the other problem is it's just a sentence by itself. There's no other context. There's no like conversation where somebody said 我喜欢他了 in the context of the conversation. So I can understand why a native speaker would be like, why would this happen? But it's not their experience to think about that type of thing because they didn't learn their native language as an adult. So anyway, I know that that's kind of an annoying answer because it's just basically like, it's just that they're not, the frame that they're looking at it from is not the same as that of a learner. So ultimately it's, I'm not saying don't talk to native speakers about what makes sense, but if you just have an individual sentence by itself, without context, the frame of reference that they're going to use to look at it is going to be, not necessarily the best for a learner. Next, we have a comment from Alex Chong on Make a Movie for Tong. He says, I'm noticing that I'm having a challenging time coming up with props in particular because as I come up with something, the examples in the video keep overriding my choices because of how often it's mentioned. This is causing me to have a double association with each prop to the point where I think I've just surrendered and defaulted to the suggested prop. Is this a common phenomenon you notice from other students or is it just me personally? Well, you're only on character 8 right now. So I think that it's, it's a bit early to assume that this is going to continue to happen. But if you get how the system works, then you don't have to watch the video. We actually stop requiring every lesson to have a video after character 105 because we know that you get how it works at that point. So if you don't want to be confused, you can always just skip the video if you want, and just do it yourself without, just in your head. I mean, after all this is really just teaching you how to do this stuff in your head anyway. That said, though, it's only character 8. So I think that if you keep going, you'll find that it becomes less of an issue moving forward. Simon Meller on Anki Dex Inside, level 6 complete. Hey, Luke, on the point of having difficulty with some characters remembering sets or actors, even with daily reviews, would you suggest visually reinforcing the same ones more clearly or instead selecting entirely new ones? So this is a good question. If you're having trouble remembering an actor or remembering a set, should you consider changing it or should you consider doing some kind of emphasis? I mean, there's no absolute answer to this, but bear in mind, if you change it, then theoretically any other characters that you used in that set would also have to change. So the further you would get along, the less practical that would be. However, here's how you can do to make it visually more memorable. So if you forgot the actor, then what you need to do is in your scene, have the actor interact more, have a close-up on their face, something, have them display a personality trait that's unique to them or wearing something that's unique to them. And just add some detail, make them brighter, make them a different color or something, if you want. And then in the case of the set, make sure you involve the set. Make something about the set play a role in your scene so that it's more likely that you'll remember it. So these are all fixable things which your Anki cards will reveal to you which is the weak part of your story, and then just try to emphasize that part somehow. It's actually quite simple. Alex Sumray on Make a Movie for Mu. Hi there, how often will this character be used compared to mama? So mu means mother. It can also mean female in terms of animals. So if you were to say mu mao, that would mean a female cat. But when you're talking about the mother or mama, meaning mom, the difference between them is basically the same as between mother and mom in English, except that mu is only a morpheme. It's not a word. So the word for mother in Chinese is mu qin. And so mama is like mom, and mu qin is like mother. So basically you'll say mother in a slightly more formal context, and you'll say mom when you're informal. So it's basically that difference. Nor Eckerberg on Make a Movie for D. According to my Chinese friend, a lot of Chinese don't even know the distinction of the word and referred to it as ancient Chinese. And I thought it was very cool that I knew this. I assumed that it was used in this lesson since it's much easier to imagine a bullseye rather than a grammatical particle. Right, because D is obviously most often a grammatical particle indicating possession. However, it also has an ancient meaning of target, or like a bullseye and a target. And also in the word mu di, where it's pronounced di, mu di, that means purpose, or not exactly a goal, that's a mu biao, but like a mu di is your purpose, like your purpose in life. And so if your eye is on the bullseye, then you're going to achieve your purpose. And so that's cool that your Chinese friends didn't know that. And some Chinese people aren't necessarily versed in ancient Chinese. So, that's pretty cool. Nice. William Edmeades on level 57 complete. That means that he is all the way through the course. Congratulations, Williams. You did it. He said, not that this is a race, but it took 306 days to reach 1,530 characters from 0. Just another stat to add to Luke and Phil's collection. Bring on the next expansion. Can't wait. Well, that's cool because that's 5 characters a day. That's not so bad, right? Less than a year, 306 days. And, that's about, 300 times 5 would be Yeah, it's actually exactly 5 characters a day. How about that? So he must have done that. I bet he did that. I bet he did 5 characters a day. And so there you go. You do 5 characters a day, less than a year, you can know 94% of Chinese. That's fantastic. Congratulations, William. Well done. Jason Pan on Simple Final yu qu in the pronunciation mastery. He says, 我不去 is a negative response to will you go drink? And he said, would 我不喝 also be acceptable? So like, 喝可乐你要去喝可乐吗 would be a question where you're saying, do you want to go drink? So we have 2 verbs here, and Jason's saying, why is the response, if you're not going, 我不去 and not 我不喝? And so he's saying, what could you say 我不喝? And the answer is no, not really, because when you have 2 verbs, it's usually the first verb that is the primary verb you're asking about. Like, do you want to go have a drink? It's like, if I say, do you want to have a drink? Then the primary thing I'm asking you is, do you want a drink? It's the only thing I'm asking you. And that assumes you're in the same, like I'm offering you a drink where we are. But if I say, do you want to go have a drink? The primary question I'm asking you is, do you want to go? And then the secondary thing we'll do upon arriving somewhere is have a drink. So it would be kind of weird, even in English, if you can imagine. Just think of it as the same as English. If you answered by being like, I don't drink, it's like, well, okay, but do you want to go? Like, it would be kind of like that. You'd feel like it's an awkward response if somebody said, I don't want to drink, but they didn't respond to whether or not you wanted to go. You'd be like, what? So it's similar in Chinese. So you would respond with the first verb if you're going to have a negative response. So that's how that works. Next, we have Jiggy J Diderik on new vocabulary unlocked for de. He says, is de hua always or most of the time followed by jiu? Yeah, most of the time it's possible that you leave out jiu in certain contexts, but basically it's an if-then conditional. So I say something de hua, if that, jiu then. So 他来的话你就去接他. So that would mean if he comes, then go pick him up, right? And so that would be an example of using both of them. But if sometimes you'll leave out 就, especially if you're making a suggestion. So 他不来的话我们一起去公园玩吧. 我们一起去公园玩吧. I didn't actually say 就 there because it was sort of a suggestion. I said was if he doesn't come, 他不来的话, if 的话, then let's go to the park. How about we go to the park? It's a suggestion. It's not like an absolute. And when you have a suggestion like that, sometimes you'll leave out 就. But generally speaking, if you're just making a statement and you're just doing an if-then statement, then you will use 就. Next, we have 2 questions, both on the new vocabulary unlocked from 起来. And this is the 2 questions are both very similar. So Hunter McCoy says, is usage 1 only possible as 想起来, or can 想 be replaced by other verbs? And then Alex Sumray says, been doing fine with the sentences, but this page really threw me. I'm struggling to understand the usage of 想 and 起来amongst other things and in some of these sentences. Is it advisable to really try and focus on this or move on and try to acquire it naturally over time? So that was good that Alex ended his question with that, because the answer is that absolutely just wait until you've seen 起来 in a lot of different contexts, because you'll see it a lot and it will become clearer and clearer because like Hunter is pointing out or is asking, yes, many different verbs can come before 起来. And 起来 just means to like start or come about or bring rise to. And so that's kind of abstract and weird, but when you see it with lots of different words, 他笑起来了, he started laughing. Right? And so like that, it would be weird to say 他开始笑, he begins laughing. It's easier to say 他笑起来了. Right? So like that 起来, you'll get the sense of how it works when you see it in lots of different contexts, and it's just sort of indicating the arisal of the verb that came before it. And it's kind of, when you just try to explain it, it's a little bit weird, but when you see it in context loads of times, as Alex asks, then you'll have no problem with it over time. Simon Meller on It's a Word for Bye. This week we had a lot of people asking questions about the sentences that came in phase 2, which is like not really when we're focused on sentences, but hey, why not answer them anyway? So he says, just on the sentences below, are we assuming that the flower is part of a patch or place and therefore using 这里 instead of 这个? So the sentence he's referring to is 这里的百花很酷. The white flower is cool. Like, so the white flowers here are cool. And so like 这里的百花 means the white flower or white flowers, depends on the what, it's not clear whether it's plural or singular, but 这里的百花 means the flowers that belong to here. We don't say it like that in English, but that's how you express it in Chinese. So 这里的 any object indicates it's the object that belongs to this place. So you might say it's maybe they're at a restaurant and there's decorations of white flowers. It's like, oh, the flowers here. We wouldn't say the restaurant's flowers or here's flowers. That would be weird. But in Chinese, you say it like that. You say 这里的 something. 这里的百花. So it's that's all it is. And then you just make a comment on it, which in this case is 很酷. Cool. Chris Callitz on This Is What Your Study Session Should Look Like. He says, I downloaded the Hansen words levels 1 through 3 into Anki. I'm on a Mac, but I do not see the levels broken down in the browse function. That's because you need to look a little bit lower. They're down. So first of all, the actual deck is all of levels 1 through 3. And then below, there are tags, and one of them says MBM level 01, MBM level 02, MBM level 03. And so that's how you find each of those. And so he says, should I download again? No need. You just need to look for the tags a little bit lower in the sidebar. Next, we're going to move to some movie scenes. So these are shared movie scenes in the Mandarin Blueprint Method section of the course where we're doing full mnemonic scenes of various characters. So we have Phil Challinor on Make a Movie for Fu, which means father. Forrest Gump is in the bathroom of my childhood home, and there's BB-8, the prop for my prop for Ba, and an old-fashioned manual lawnmower. Forrest is pushing the lawnmower, and he is holding BB-8 above the handles as you might a very small child. He is playing with him like a father with his child. So, this is a good scene, and of course, Forrest Gump does end up having a son at the end of the movie. And so maybe you can imagine that something from the movie where he's like, I remember in the movie he's playing ping pong, although that would introduce some new props, so I don't want to necessarily do that. But like he does actually use a lawnmower in Forrest Gump, so maybe I think this is fine because he does have that little child in the movie played by Haley Joel Osment, and I think this that works fine actually. Cool, nice scene. Derek Huang on Make a Movie for Tui. Sometimes, instead of creating a visual in my head from the normal memory method with props, I would look at this character, break it down, and it looks like a finger poking or pushing a turkey. I do this quite often, and these days, if I don't know / don't remember the character, I would try to break it down and try to recognize it. Hope this helps anyone. I mean, sure, you can always, there are some characters you're just going to get right away, and you won't need to really make a scene for if you can think of some kind of shortcut. Just be strict with yourself when it comes to the Anki card coming up. Like if you can't remember how to write the character, you can't remember how it's pronounced, then you probably should do a full mnemonic scene. But nothing wrong with that because especially at this level, because at this level you're in phase 5 of the course, you've gotten the hang of the Hansa movie method, so I think it's perfectly fine. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for Ding. So this we gave this character the meaning of pudding. And it's not like the actual meaning in the dictionary definition. It actually has a meaning of fourth from an ancient Chinese heavenly stem. It's the fourth heavenly stem. And it also means like you got a D on a paper if somebody puts ding at the top. But the character is most often used in English transliterations. So, and one of them being bu ding, which is pudding. And so it's whenever there's some kind of like ding in English where there's a word that has that sound in it, then this is almost definitely going to be the character they use to represent that. So if there's a person whose name ends in ding, that probably is going to have this character in it. And so we thought, okay, pudding is a decent enough keyword to help you remember that this is mostly a transliteration character. And as you can see, it's a character that's clearly going to be a prop in later characters. And so it's mostly about coming up with the scene and then making a prop. So anyway, let's see how Donna made this character into pudding. My friend Donna is at the entrance of, Della, her friend Donna. So this is Della's scene. My friend Donna is at the entrance of my ENG location, and she desperately wants to enter and go to the cafeteria because she can see through the window that they only have one of her favorite puddings left. However, there is a huge, nasty hockey player at the door blocking her way with his stick because he wants the pudding too. She reaches into her purse for her handy razor blade and deftly throws it, cutting off the top of the hockey stick, leaving him in wonderment as she zips by him. And so this is a good scene. Got the razor blade, got the hockey stick, and got the pudding being the main goal. And I like the conflict that's built in of there only being one pudding left. And because it's only one pudding left, you could even make it like bright and shiny with like a behind playing in the background. And of course, this scene could have gotten a lot more violent, but she chose to keep it nice and PC, or PG, I should say. And that's fine. PC and PG. All right, Della Fuller on Make a Movie for Da. Donald Trump is in the living room of my daughter's apartment. He believes that she needs a big picture of him up on her wall, unsurprisingly. He is trying to hammer a nail into the wall, but he keeps hitting his finger. He immediately tweets out that this is Obama's fault. Yeah, so nice. So we got finger. We have the nail. He's, of course, hitting, and that's the meaning of this character. And, of course, we have the actor getting involved by tweeting about it being Obama's fault. Hilarious. Great scene. Clear enough. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for Gu, which means older brother. My grandson Gabriel and his older brother, who can drive, are meeting me at the entrance of a school where I teach, the E location. They are carrying 2 photos of JFK, one on top of the other, because my students are studying JFK's inauguration speech today, and I want to put pictures of him on my board. But I forgot them at home by mistake. I give the older brother a big hug and thank him for driving Gabriel. So we established the older brother. We get the 2 JFKs, which are the representation of the props here, and it makes sense. This scene's creative, and there's emotion involved in it because there's gratitude and there's that forgetfulness and all of that. So great, good stuff. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for Qi, which means to ride, like ride a bike or ride a horse. Hence why the horse component is in it. My niece Chelsea is in the kitchen of my childhood home with Jesus and a horse, right? So Jesus is the representation of miracle on the right. Jesus looks tired. She suggests to Jesus that he ride the horse and rest up a bit. Sure, why not? Short and sweet, simple, got both props involved. It involves the riding, and of course, because horse is in the component, this is an example of where, of course, the component fits with the scene because it's there in the first place because it's related to the meaning in terms of riding a horse or riding a bike or things like that. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for E, which means chair. My friend Ingrid and Jesus are in the living room of my childhood home with all of my family members and a beautiful pine tree left over from Christmas. So we have the pine tree, we have the Jesus representing the miracle, and she looks around, but every couch and chair is filled already. So Jesus asks her to bring him the tree. He touches the tree, and miraculously it turns into a chair for her to sit in. She says, no, please, you sit. He says, no, please, you sit, which is, of course, a common courtesy back and forth. And, it's interesting that Jesus, of course, turns it into a chair by a miracle, which is perfectly fine. It fits his character. But he was also a carpenter, so imagining him in a montage quickly putting together the chair from the tree would be kind of cool too. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for Nay, which means internal, inside. My N actor is in the backyard of my EI set. He finds a beautiful umbrella displayed under a glass case. Obviously, very valuable. It begins to rain. He goes through tremendous internal struggle. Should he or shouldn't he? But then reaches under the case and steals the umbrella. Yeah, I think this one is okay. Obviously, internal struggle, you'll have to show that a lot with the facial expressions. And it's not necessarily a super visual way of showing internal, although I suppose the umbrella is internal to the glass case, so it's probably okay. Probably clear enough. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for Liang, which means couple, a couple of. My friend Lori is in the living room of my ANG set. So that's L-I and A-N-G, and living room is third tone. She has a couple of amazing dancing brooms that she would like to display in a glass case, but they are too long. She cuts the ends off of the broom with a razor blade so they will fit. So, yeah, I think that's clear enough. We've got a couple of, maybe... Yeah, no, that should be fine. I'm like thinking maybe there's a way to make it very clear that they're a set, but maybe they just look very similar, so that should be fine. Natalia Kovalenko on Make a Movie for Jiàn, which means to detest. To detest. Irina is playing in Andy's backyard with her favorite pit bull, prop 1. Suddenly, it starts to rain. Irina believes her pit bull detests rain, so she puts a hard hat, prop 2, on his head. Pitbull is furious. He actually doesn't mind rain, but absolutely detests having anything touch his head. So I think that is probably clear enough. I think that one thing that's good about detest is the universal human look of disgust. So maybe you can make the Pitbull a little bit cartoony and give the look of disgust that people will have. Detest, disgust, are close enough. As long as that's clear, it should be okay. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for jiàn, which means gold or metal. Jessica is trying to make a grand entrance at my EN set. She is wearing a gorgeous golden crown, and her servant is carrying a beautiful flowered parasol over her. Unfortunately, the parasol doesn't cover the fact that she has devil horns growing out of her head, and they're making it difficult to keep the golden crown on her head. So, looks good. We've got the parasol crown and devil horns, and it's of course a golden crown, so making sure it's nice and shiny and very clearly gold to get across the keyword, and you should be fine. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for jiàn, which can mean either like the heavens, or it can mean sky, or it can mean day. My friend Tamara is at the entrance of my AN set. She is enjoying a gin and tonic on the front patio and is basking in the sun. However, Clifford, the big red dog, comes bounding over to play. He hasn't been groomed in months, and his shaggy hair blocks all view of the sky when he stands over her. She pulls out her handy razor clippers and gives him a much-needed haircut. When she is done, Clifford is back to his handsome self, and she can once more see the sky and enjoy the sun. So we got contrast here. Can't see the sky, using the props, using the razor blade prop to make the contrast show the sky. This is an ideal scene. I like it all around. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for shuō, which means to calculate. Mike Wazowski is in the backyard of my AN set. As usual, he has gotten himself into some trouble. He has locked himself into handcuffs. Before noticing that there is no key to unlock them, Snow White has come to his rescue. Bamboo is the only material available in the backyard, so she is making careful calculations in order to create a key. So key out of it, so she can free Mike. He is quite upset, so she reassures him, saying, "I calculate that I will have you free in just 3 more minutes, Mike. Don't worry." So that's clear. We have the different props all represented correctly. The handcuffs, the bamboo, and Mike Wazowski representing the eye component. And then her calculations, as she's making the calculations, I imagine like a montage of her using a calculator and her using a compass and like whatever. She's doing like clearly loads of calculations. We can maybe even imagine equations coming in and out of her head as she's thinking. That could be kind of cool. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for Lian, which means to get in touch with. My friend Lori is in my AN set kitchen. Her ear is throbbing, and she really needs to get in touch with her doctor in order to have it checked. However, she's in so much pain that she has messed up her phone password too many times, and now it is locked. So we have ear and the phone being locked, and she can't get in touch with her doctor. The phone being locked as a representation of guan is okay. I wonder if that's always your prop for that, because obviously the get in touch, using the phone to get in touch, is probably related to the meaning. That said, though, in and of itself, this scene is fine. Everything about it is clear, and of course, if she was having a medical situation, getting in touch with the doctor would be the primary focus. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for Ma, which is, of course, mom. RBG is standing at the entrance of my A set. Matt Damon comes riding up on his horse. He shouts, "Mom, is that you? I've been looking for you everywhere." RBG replies, "No, sorry, but I'm sure she's very proud of you." I don't know who RBG is, but I'm sure it's the representation of the female component here. Yeah, it must be, because in the next scene it's also RBG. I wonder what RBG is. But anyway, that's the scene is clear enough. Della Fuller on Make a Movie for Hall. Heath Ledger walks into the living room of my AO set. RBG and Pee Wee Herman are already there, sitting on the couch and chatting. Heath says, "Good. Now that you're both here, could you listen to me run through my lines? I don't know if I'm any good." So RBG must be a person. I still am not exactly sure what Della means by RBG, but clearly a person, and both RBG and Pee Wee Herman are chatting. I don't think they're very involved in the scene. I think it'd be very easy for you to remember them. So what we need to do is have this scene go a little bit further. Also, the keyword is represented by the word good. And sure, he says it in two different ways, so it's somewhat memorable. But what we should have is him running through his lines, and maybe you have a montage of Pee Wee Herman, RBG, and Heath Ledger walking through the lines. And at the beginning, he's really bad, and then you show the montage, and then by the end, he's very good. That'll make it a little bit clearer, and that will also get Pee Wee Herman and RBG a bit more involved in the scene. Final movie scene share for today is Natalia Kovalenko on Make a Movie for Jiàn. Julia Roberts is in the bathroom of my EN location, stepping on the scale, prop 1, to check her weight, and realizing that there's no way she's going to fit into that ball gown, prop 2, she is having made for the Academy Awards. She's so embarrassed, she doesn't even want to go outside. She's trying to find out if there's a weight loss clinic nearby where she can go for a few days. So, yeah, I mean, nearby, I guess you could imagine that she's looking on the map and looking for nearby locations. That could be okay. I think that's probably, I'm just worried that nearby representation isn't going to be clear enough. So make sure, if she's looking on like Google Maps or something in your mind's eye, that she's looking, maybe you see several pins drop of weight loss clinics and she's looking for the one closest to her little GPS location. I think that could be okay. Awesome. Well, that's a great set of comments and emails and mnemonic scene shares this week. Thank you so much for listening. Head over to MandarinBlueprint.com to learn more about the Mandarin Blueprint Method. And thank you, as always, for listening. My name is Phil Crimmins, and we'll see you next week.